This week, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald hits theaters, and leading up to it, I've been reviewing all the movies inside the Wizarding World. We're in Part 7. That means I'm talking about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Parts 1 and 2. So let's talk about it. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Sean Chandler, and I started this channel essentially because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place, and consider clicking that subscribe button. Before I get started talking about these films, go ahead and tell me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you think there's a gigantic gap in the quality between the two films? Also, before I get started, if you didn't know this, I haven't read the books yet. You guys are convincing me. I'm probably going to check them out after doing this series because you guys have made some compelling arguments, but I haven't read them, so my perspective on the films is as films in and of themselves, and I kind of have an interesting perspective as I'm watching them with my wife, who's read all the books many times, listened to the books many times, and you see them very differently when you have a bunch of background information as you watch the films as compared to me that's watching them with just the information that the films present, which gives me an interesting little take on them. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that they decided to split the story into two parts. And as someone that has not read the books, I think that that was a very big mistake. I think that they really hurt themselves by doing that. I think the story as a whole would have been stronger as one very long 3-hour film as opposed to two films that add up to 4.5 hours or something like that. I think it really hurt the pacing, especially of the first film, and it makes a scenario where the focus gets really lost a lot because they're trying to take the first half of a story and make it a story in and of itself. And so the part one, it gets going and it's putting a lot of information in there and a lot of details that don't necessarily have payoffs inside of the film that you're watching. It's all set up, obviously, because all the payoff is in the second part. But it's giving us so many different details, and it goes on little tracks, and even like Grindelwald makes an appearance inside of it, and it's just kind of throwing information at us that as someone that is just watching it as a film that doesn't have all the background information, like many of these Harry Potter films, it's pretty confusing at points in time to try and follow all of what it's trying to tell me. And then the second part, I think, does a lot better in balancing a lot of details. And we'll get into the specific films in just a second. But because of this, because they had to craft an individual film out of the first part, they have to restructure things in such a way to kind of make things flow in a specific way so it can stand alone. And the emphasis gets put on the wrong things at times. And it creates a scenario where it's not like you can just cut the two together easily and make this 4.5 hour film. I'm sure someone out there's done some supercuts. I'd be very interesting to see if there is a good supercut out there for these two films into one. But I just really think they hindered both films, especially part one, by doing this. And I think it gave them a little bit too much license to throw too many things in that they couldn't really explore. But you could put it just enough in there that it doesn't make for a great film, that makes for one that kind of meanders. So with that in mind, that I think they really should have made a 3-hour movie out of the book as opposed to two films that add up to 4.5 hours. Let's start talking about the first film. And there's a lot of really great things in here. Right off the bat, it kicks off and you get to see our heroes in the Muggle world. And there's this great action sequence, chase sequence that happens with them on broomsticks in the real world, not just on Quidditch fields and things like that. And it's a nice change of pace. That's actually, I saw this one in the theater back in the day, and I think I saw 4 or 5 of the films in the theater. That sequence at the beginning is one of the things that most stood out to me when I initially watched these films because it was handled so nicely. But from there, when it starts really kind of getting into the meat of the story as they're looking for Horcruxes and trying to destroy them and figure out the mysteries of everything kind of going on and stop Voldemort, it just feels like it's meandering a little bit and spending way too much time on things that it doesn't need to spend time on. Especially for a movie that's only half of a story and it's 2.5 hours long, it just feels like it goes on forever, just having nice moments. And has moments a lot of them are really great. When you have, of course, Hermione and Harry dancing, it's this really sweet, nice moment that is a great payoff after 7 films and 10 years of movie making. It's a really neat little moment that's in there. But there's so much other stuff that it just feels like we're out in the woods forever, or just going on all these little side quests without a good, strong sense of momentum or urgency. And another big, gigantic problem here is that it doesn't do a good job of communicating the passing of time. And so as I was watching it, I picked up on a couple things. I was like, wait a minute, a lot of time's passing, right? I'm like, looking at my wife like months are passing, right? She's like, oh yeah, like a ton of time's passing. I was like, oh, like was not entirely clear from the way the story is unfolding. And little things like that are a problem when you have a story that's this long, covering this much stuff, little side quests, and it doesn't capture the passing of time nearly as well as it should have. And I also think it doesn't necessarily, because it doesn't have a real climax that's supposed to pay things off, it's a very odd film because it's setting things up that all pay off in the next film. And it has all these plot lines that don't really lead anywhere because they lead to the next film. But we have what's like a third act in the showdown where everything kind of happens, and it makes for something that's really not satisfying. And it's not supposed to, and it shouldn't. Which makes for the inherent problem with the film when you have a film that's not supposed to be a setup. Or like the story, it wasn't written initially in the book to be a setup movie. It was meant to be the first half of one story. And so it just doesn't sit on its own well. And movies really should. They really should be able to stand on their own, and this one doesn't. Like I said, there's great moments though. The action sequence at the beginning is one of the best of the entire franchise. The personal moments between our main trio, great stuff in there. The painful death in the third act, it hits the way it's supposed to. It has that emotional weight. Do I think that they should have made this a standalone film separate from part 2? I don't. I think it would have been much better. And if you guys know out there of a supercut where someone trimmed this down to around 3 hours, I would love to check that out. I think that probably could be my favorite of the Harry Potter films if someone found a way to trim it down, get the focus right. This movie, it's too long for the amount of story it has, and it adds too much confusion by going down too many rabbit trails that it doesn't need to go down. And so for me, I think it would have been better. Trim this one down and attach it to part 2. For this one, I would go with a B- and a 6.5. It's good, but it definitely drags on a little bit in there. Great moments, not the best story flow overall. From there, let's move on to part 2, and this is a huge improvement, as it's essentially all the payoff from a book. Part 1 is all set up, and this one is all of the payoff, all of the answers. But it's not just all the payoff and all the answers for the Deathly Hallows. It's written, the book is all the payoff for 7 books. It all comes into this one movie, or in this case, it's all the payoff of 8 films is in this movie right here. Like, what's been going on with Snape? What's really going on with Harry and Voldemort? We've been waiting for this final showdown, and here it is, and they go for it. I mean, it is all out. That's, for me, one of the frustrations with this series is, oh, Voldemort's so evil. Oh, the Dark Lord, we don't even speak his name. But he's never around. He's never actually doing stuff. He's always in the shadows. It's always, when is he gonna come here? When's he gonna show up? And here it is. And it pays off. He's got a whole army, and there's stakes. There's people dying that you're like, whoa, I can't believe that they killed these characters off. Like, they went there and they did that. And then it's not just people dying, but Hogwarts messed up, legitimately jacked up because stuff is going down. And then beyond that, we get just kind of tragedy, backstory in the Snape, and we discover what's really been going on here and the true tragedy of all of his life, and it kind of reinterpreting everything that we've known and everything that we've seen about him, and even reinterpreting Dumbledore and kind of how all of this fits together. Wildly different perspective on both of these characters inside of this film. All of it paying off really nicely. You get some of the coolest wizard stuff because you get so much wizard stuff and wizard battle. And of course, I'm going to be a person that's into battle, and you get tons of it here. And as someone that's a big fan of, Joseph Campbell type storytelling, the hero's journey. And we've been hearing rumblings of Harry as the chosen one. And this is the one where it kind of goes full Christ mythology, death, resurrection. What does it mean that he's the chosen one? And intertwining mythology inside it, inside of it, that twists, turns, reveals, but all of it making sense of what came before. Actually filling in things like, why is there this weird connection all the way back to lightning bolt forehead from the get-go. Why is he this person? What's going on here? How does this all fit together? And it all intertwines in ways that you get answers and you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah. You've earned these answers. You've earned this payoff. You've earned this Christ, death, resurrection type moment. And all of it kind of these little details that kind of small things happen of the piece fit together, and even the way Draco fits into it. And Draco did this, but then Harry picked up this, and because this happened in this scene, Elder Wands, and all of it feels like a well thought out, crafted story that improves what we saw before. Some of that stuff in Half-Blood Prince that I was frustrated about, I get it now. I understand it in the full picture when we get all the details retroactively. I like that a lot more now. Even part one has these little moments. Oh, okay, this is a little bit better now. Which kind of goes back to, as I've kind of said throughout some of this, if you've been watching through all these, some of my frustration is that there's too much information that you need to have read the books to really understand what's going on. And I have it my wife is the encyclopedia filling me in, has been very useful. And at the end of this, I'm feeling like I'm a lot more interested than ever before to go and start checking out these books. Because as I'm digging in deep, having conversations with you guys and the wife explaining to me, going, I really should dig in deeper into all of this. There's some really good stuff in here that I think I really could enjoy. And you guys are convinced me. But so on the negatives on this one, I think it does still have the problem of it's a movie that just picks up and gets going. It doesn't, in certain ways, it doesn't really stand on its own because there's no first half of this story. It's just it starts and they got this guy and it's let's go break into somewhere. And it just assumes that we're in the middle. It just jumps right into it because it is part two, and it assumes that you've seen part one. It doesn't stand alone at all. And it's all payoff. It's all showdowns and things like that. And I just really think this one would pay off even better. It would be a stronger film if this was just the true this was the longest film right here. Deathly Hallows, no part 1 and 2, just this 1 3-hour epic. And maybe let's Lord of the Rings this deal. Maybe there's the 4-hour cut that is all this together. But I think if you made a 3-hour cut of this, you could have a really cool film that ties everything together. It's focused. It's we got to get the Horcruxes. We got to stop. Where are they at? And then they go to Hogwarts, and the Battle of Hogwarts is 90 minutes long, and it's epic, and there's answers, and we find out everything going on. I wish that they would have done that. But still, part 2, easily one of the best films in the franchise. Largely, what makes this one work really well is that it doesn't have the problem that's plagued the previous 7 films, which is they're covering enormous amounts of time while trying to tell a focused story, which is hard to do in a film. It's much easier to do in a book where you have chapters and there's a bunch of different things. Every storytelling format has advantages and disadvantages, and books can tell that type of story a lot better. A movie about a battle at a school and they're going in there, they're trying to find a couple things and battle this one guy and defeat his army. That is very cinematic. And that's why this one pays off, because it's focused. It's not covering an enormous amount of time. It's a focused little window of time. So the story is clear as to what they're trying to do, how much time is passing, why they're trying to do it, when they're victorious. And so it really, really works for me. Not quite the best of the bunch for me, but very close. For me, I'm gonna give this one a B+ and an 8 out of 10 on the entertainment scale. So there you have it. I've finished all of the Harry Potter films. Fantastic Beasts is coming tomorrow. Check out that playlist right over there with all of my other reviews in this series if you're picking up a little bit later in the game. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.